Hey everybody, welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by Tutvid.com. This is another tutorial in a series of tutorials Howard from IceflowStudios.com and I are doing, inspired by the wonderful graphics by the great folks over at 365psd.com. Check out the website, donate some money, follow them on Twitter, and check out the new free PSD every single day that they provide. This right here, these social icon buttons, this is what inspired this tutorial that I'm about to do for you guys. And we're going to go ahead and make a Facebook and Twitter button. So let's hop back over, and here's what we're going to be creating right here. So I'm going to bring back the interface of Photoshop, and we're going to go ahead and create a new Photoshop document. It's Command or Control N, and I'm going to give it a name of Facebook, Twitter, BTN. There we go. And I'm going to set the width to 1280 pixels and the height to 720 pixels. Resolution for me at 72 pixels per inch. Hit OK. And now we're going to go ahead right off the bat and we're going to fill our background layer with sort of a very light blue. I'm going to double click the white color swatch. It's going to bring up my color picker, and I'm going to select the hexadecimal code area, and I'm going to enter E0, F3, F5. Very, very light blue, very bright and desaturated. Hit OK, and then hit Alt Backspace of the option delete on the Mac. Now that we've done that, we want to go Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and we're going to add 2%. Gaussian, and we're not going to check on monochromatic. So just like that, and we're good to go. Go ahead and hit OK. And now that we've done that, we want to unlock this as a background layer. So we're going to hold down the Alt or Option key, and we're just going to double click the background layer. And now we're going to go Layer, Layer Style, Pattern Overlay. And right in here, what we want to do is we want to choose a new pattern. So we're going to select the pattern thumbnail, and I'm going to choose large thumbnail to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what's going on here. I want to choose this pattern right here. It's called gauze. Yeah, you can see there if you hold the mouse over long enough, it'll say gauze. If you don't see these patterns, what you want to do is select this little flyout menu. Let me move this up so it remains on screen. Select the little flyout menu here and just choose load patterns, or excuse me, not load patterns, what am I thinking? You want artistic or artist surfaces. I'm going to hit OK, and you can see it's just these same exact patterns. So flyout menu, artist surfaces, and it's right in there. So I'm going to scroll back up. We're going to grab Gaussian, just like that. You can see it drops that pattern right into place. We want to knock out all the whites. We're going to go Blend Mode, Multiply. Now we can see our blue creeping through very nicely. And I'm going to drop the opacity of this to something like 5%, so it's extremely subtle. Go ahead and hit OK. Now if we zoom in, you can see there is the little crosshatch looking gauze pattern, if you will, in there. It's quite nice. Now what we need to do is grab our rectangular or rounded rectangle tool. So it's located down here beneath the rectangle tool, the rounded rectangle tool. Hotkey is U. And then look to the tool options bar, and we're going to set the radius to 27 pixels, and we're going to choose just the first icon right here to the right of that in case anything else is selected. And we're going to choose to draw paths. So that's the second icon over here in this cluster of 3 icons to the left side of that toolbar. We're also going to go Window, Info. The reason we're going to open up the info panel is just so we can keep track of the height here. I want the height of my button to be the same as the radius I've set. So I've set 27 pixels, so I'm going to choose, I want my button here to be 27 pixels tall. So I'm going to begin drawing it out. You can see the height there. It's right here, W and H. I'm going to undo that. Is at about 114. I'm going to zoom it back. There we go, 27. So I'm 403 pixels wide by 27 pixels tall. I'm going to let that go, and we've created our initial shape. Make my info panel go away. And what I want to do now is, right now this path is selected. Over here in the paths panel, you can see it is selected. We don't even need to go over there though. We're going to go Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color. And we're going to name this layer, let's name it Button Fill. We're going to hit OK. And we're just going to choose white as our color. Now, basically, this button is going to be the color of our button, of our, whether it's our Facebook button or our Twitter button. So we really want to give this a color, but before I do that, I'm just going to duplicate this layer, Command or Control J, and I'm going to double click on the layer name to highlight the layer name, and I'm going to name this Styles. So this white layer on top is going to contain all of our layer styles, which are going to style whatever the color is we fill in beneath it. So let's actually just shut off the styles layer, and just so we have a visual reference as we're working through it, double click on this color thumbnail, and let's give this sort of a Facebook blue. Let's give this the color of, let's try 628 AC6, something like that. There's a nice desaturated blue. How about that? Hit OK. And there we go. We've got our fill, and then above it we've got our styles. However, note when we turn the styles layer back on, it covers it with white. It's because it's just another color fill layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that layer, and we're going to get rid of the fill opacity. You've got your little fill opacity right here in the layers panel. Select that and just drag it all the way to 0. So now when we apply layer styles to this layer, we're only going to see the layer styles and not the fill color. So it's going to behave as if there was fill there, but it's not going to display the fill, only the layer styles. Let's go ahead and just zoom in on this guy a little bit so we can sort of see the differences that we're making very quickly. And I want to go ahead and add an inner glow, or an inner shadow, excuse me, to this layer right off the bat. So we're going to go layer, layer style, inner shadow. And I'm going to set the blend mode to overlay. Again, we want these layer styles to interact with the color beneath, so we're going to be using blend modes and opacity quite a bit. We're going to set the color to white, so you can right there see we've got a nice, very, very light blue inner shadow. And we're going to reduce the opacity to about 50% and uncheck global light, and we're going to set the angle to 90 degrees. We want it to come straight down from the top. We're going to set the distance to, let's go with 2, and the size to 0. So we just have a very subtle line going across the top of our button. Great. Now that we've done this, we're going to go ahead and add an outer glow. So I'm going to choose outer glow, and we're going to set the blend mode to normal in this case, and we're going to choose essentially the same exact blue as we have here in our button. Maybe make it a little bit lighter. And I'm going to reduce the opacity to, I'm going to leave it at 75 for now. Let's increase the size a little bit. Let's bring it up to maybe 10. So, ooh, 10's a little bit too, or excuse me, that's 15. Let's bring it up close to 10. 10's a bit much. Let's go with 8. I'm going to settle on 8 pixels. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to reduce the opacity at this point down to around 35. Looks great. All right. Now that we've done that, we want to go ahead and add an inner glow. So I'm going to select inner glow. And I'm going to set the blend mode. I really want to blow this out. So I'm going to set the blend mode to, let's go with color dodge. That's pretty hot. Let's go linear dodge. That's even a little bit brighter, hotter. I'm speaking as if you're looking into sort of a very bright light. So very, very white. We're going to stick with linear dodge, and we're just going to have to crank this opacity way down. Very, very subtle. Let's go with something around 10%. 10, maybe a little bit lower. 7 or 8%. 7 or 8% actually looks pretty good. And then just boost the size just a little bit, 1 or 2 pixels. So we're going to set the size at 6 pixels. And lastly, we just want to go ahead and throw a stroke on this. And we're going to set the size of the stroke to 1 pixel. We're going to set the position of the stroke to inside. And we're going to reduce the opacity. We're going to kick it way down. Somewhere around 20% should work out pretty nicely. 20, 22%. I got a 22% here. Great. Now that we've done that, we just need to drop a gradient overlay over this to really give this more of sort of a rounded button look. Just give it a little bit of, add a little bit of something to the button itself. So we're going to go gradient overlay, and we're going to set this gradient overlay to overlay, the blend mode of overlay that is, and I'm going to select my gradient bar right there to open up the gradient editor, and I have a gradient saved here, just 30 to 100 gray gradient, and basically what I've done is I've set my color stop to the far left to 999999, and then my color stop to the far right to E5, E5, E5. So just a medium gray going to a lighter gray. Set the location, well, I'll leave the one here on the right all the way off to the right, and then set the one to the left just to a location of 30%. So that's going to bring him right out and just start to close the gap, if you will, on our gradient a little bit. Hit OK, and I think what I want to do is just reduce maybe the opacity of the gradient just a little bit until it looks good. So something maybe around 50%. Let's check that. Maybe still a little strong. Well, yeah, we'll stick between 45 and 50% should be perfect. So just a very, very subtle effect. If we uncheck gradient, you can see that's what it looked like without the gradient, with the gradient. So it just adds a very nice pop to the button. Helps us even see our line running across the top of our button a little bit more as well. So it really does a nice job of that. Go ahead and hit OK. And what we need to do next is go ahead and add the actual social media icon. So I'm going to drag in from off screen here the download. I've got a download available, which is right here. I'm going to drag it in, and it's both a Twitter and a Facebook icon, which I've traced. So they are vector shape layers. You can take them both if you want, use them for whatever you want, as long as it's within the limits of reason. So we're going to just drag in the Facebook icon. We're not really going to mess with the Twitter icon. At the end, I'll show you how to convert this button quickly to a Twitter button as well. So you'll have both buttons for use on your web design or graphic design or whatever you're using this for. So we're going to grab the move tool, and I've got the color fill layer here for the Facebook icon selected. I'm just going to grab the layer, and I'm going to drag and drop it, or hold it. I'm not dropping it yet. I'm holding it on the tab for our open document. Now I'm going to drop it. I'm going to zoom out, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it with white. So I'm going to double click the layer color thumbnail, and I'm going to set it to white, like so. Hit OK, and then I'm going to go edit, transform, or just free transform path. And I'm going to set the width to, let's go with 2%, because I did this a time before, and 2% should be just about right for our button. Go ahead and commit those changes. We're going to zoom back in here so we can see what we've done. And there's our little F, so I'm going to bring him right up here and place him. And I find that placing the left side of the F with sort of right where the curve stops is about right. So just nudge it right over so it's sort of sitting in there nicely, and you can adjust the vertical positioning as well. I'm not going to use the alignment tools. I just kind of want to be able to place that by hand and place it to where it looks good. I don't really care if it's aligned perfectly, well, obviously left or right, but up or down, just because I want it to look good ultimately in the end. And sometimes alignment isn't always what looks best. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply a drop shadow to this color fill. We're going to go layer, layer style, drop shadow, and I want to uncheck global light. And I'm going to set the angle to 90 degrees, again, just having it come straight down. Set the distance to, let's go with 2, and the size to 0, so we just have a nice little shadow there. And then set the blend mode to overlay. Again, we want it to interact with the color beneath it. I'm actually going to reduce the opacity a little bit as well, just to let that ease up just a little bit. So maybe we'll go with 50% there, hit OK, and select the background layer, and we've placed our little F icon. Hit Command or Control 1 to zoom out to 100%. And we've placed our icon. So we now know at least this is going to be a button that says, hey, you know, friend me on Facebook, or follow me on Facebook, or like my page on Facebook, or whatever you're going to use this for. Next, what we're going to do is create a brand new layer. Layer new. Layer. And we're going to call this layer line. So there we go. We've got a new layer called line. Hold the mouse, or click and hold the mouse on the rectangular marquee tool, and move down to the single column marquee tool. What this tool does is it selects one pixel from the very top of your document to the very bottom of your document. You only have to click once, and there you go. You've got a 1 pixel wide selection running from the top to the bottom of your document. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill this with the color of black. So I'm going to hit the letter D to set my foreground and background colors to default, and black is the default foreground color. Alt backspace, Option delete, and then Command or Control D to deselect. We now have this black line you can see running from the top of our Photoshop document to the bottom. I'm going to zoom back in here, and let's go ahead and apply a layer style to this line. So I'm going to go layer, layer style, drop shadow. And this might not seem to make sense right now, but hang with me. What we're going to do is we're going to uncheck use global light again, and we're going to set the angle to 180 degrees. So the drop shadow is going to fall off to the very right side of this line, or just to the right side of this line, as you'll see in a moment. Set the blend mode to normal, and we're going to set the distance to 1 and the size to 0. So all we've done here is we've doubled the thickness of the line. We've basically placed a 1 pixel line right beside this. I'm going to set the foreground color to white. Actually, I'm not going to set it to white. I am going to set it to white, I'm sorry. We're going to leave it at white. What am I thinking? And what I've got happening here is if I boost this to 100% opacity, we now have a white line sitting right next to a black line. When I do this effect, I usually like the white line to be a little less visible than the black line. So for that reason, we're going to reduce the opacity of it to about 60%. Go ahead and hit OK. Now that we have what is the very beginning of a little letterpress or indent line that we're going to place in our button created, we're going to go ahead and set the blend mode of this line layer to overlay. Now, we still have some of this line running out over the rest of our document, so we're going to mask it to our button by control-clicking the vector mask of the button fill layer. So I've now loaded this button as a selection. The line layer is still active, so I'm going to go Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal Selection. Our little line is now only within our mask here. Now, I want to move the line to the left a little bit, get it a little bit closer to the F. Not too close, but a little bit closer than it is now. So what I first need to do is unlink the contents of the layer from the mask by hitting this little link icon in the Layers panel. Grab the Move tool, and I'm just going to hold down my Shift key and nudge this. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, I still have the mask selected. You want to actually select the layer thumbnail when you unlink the mask in the layer. Go ahead and nudge that right over. And what's happening now, as you can see, not only do you need to deselect that, but when we set this guy to overlay, as you can see, the the drop down up here is still active. It's still highlighted. So what you just want to do is just click anywhere out in the Photoshop document to deselect that, and then nudge it right over, and it's going to move over for you just like it normally should. So right there, I'm going to move the line over to about there. And we need to apply one other little mask to this to sort of fade the edges. So go ahead and load this mask as a selection by control-clicking our new layer mask here. Grab the gradient tool. We just want the simple foreground to background gradient as long as your foreground to background is black to white, or you can just grab the black to white gradient, hit OK. And then up here on the gradient toolbar, we need to do two things. Number one, you don't want the linear gradient, you want this reflected gradient. And you also want to just tick on reverse. Start with the gradient tool in about the middle of your button and drag straight down to almost the bottom of the button. I find that it turns out best if you don't get quite to the bottom of the button. And again, make sure you have the mask selected so you don't get that crazy effect that I just got. And let's do that again. Start in the middle of the button, drag straight down, and you can see we've created our little mask there. And if need be, you can reduce the opacity of this a little bit. I actually think I kind of like it the way it is. And then I'm just going to go select, deselect, and again, note the hotkey. That'd be Command or Control D. And then I'm going to zoom back out to 100%. You can see we've got our little letterpress line. A little bit of trouble getting it, but hey, we got to troubleshoot a little bit as well. So now all that's left to do really is add some text and then shorten up the width of this button, because I know it's going to be a little bit too wide, but it's better to go a little bit larger, and then we can just scale back later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my foreground color to white by just swapping the foreground and background color using those little arrows. Select the text tool, and I'm going to use Verdana Bold 12 point. Just for the sake of this, I almost never use Verdana, and neither should you probably. We're going to set the width of our text here to 90%. That's just the text I'm using. You can use any font you want. And this is the character panel, by the way. That's window character. And I'm just going to type in here, single quote, like, closing single quote, us on Facebook. Exclamation point. Try to spell it correctly, though. There we go, Facebook. And then I'm going to zoom in on this. I'm going to grab the Move tool. The hotkey for that is V. And I'm just going to slide this guy right over and align it as close to the center of the button as I can. Great. So now that we've done that, we just need to throw a shadow underneath this text, and we'll basically be done. So double-click on this layer, or you can go Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow. And really all we need is a very, very simple drop shadow. Uncheck Use Global Light. Set the angle to 90 degrees. Set the distance to 2 and the size to 0. The same exact thing we have over on the F icon. However, I'm not going to use a blend mode of overlay. I'm just going to reduce the opacity to maybe like 35%, something like that. Actually, let's set the distance to 1. What does that look like? I think I actually like that a little bit more. Distance of 1 and maybe opacity of something like 50%. Go ahead and hit OK. And there we go. We've got our icon and our text right there in place. Now to shorten this button up, we're going to go ahead and grab the Direct Selection tool. Not the Path Selection tool. It's the white arrow, hotkey A. And I'm going to select the vector mask for button fill first. And I'm just going to drag a selection over the right side of it, and I'm going to hold down my shift key, and I'm going to count. How many times do I tick it back to the left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I think I'm going to go with 20. And then I'm going to do the same for the styles layer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 19, 20. There we go. Cool, so we've got our little Facebook button. Now what if we want to make this a Twitter button? How difficult is that? How much change does it involve? We can get this thing changed in probably less than a minute. So here is how we do it. Select your bottom layer, hold down the shift key, select your top layer, and then just hit Command or Control G to group these guys together. This is all just for organization. We're just going to name this Facebook. I'm going to grab this whole group, I'm going to drag it down to the new layer icon to duplicate it. We've got 2 of these. I'm going to double click this one and name it Twitter. Again, organization. Grab your Move tool right up here, black arrow at the top of the tools, and drag this guy straight down. There we go. Wonderful. However, we've got a little bit of a problem. Check this out. Look at this. We're missing our line that we had up there. Why is that happening? Well, that's happening because what we've got going on is we didn't link the mask before we went and dragged this. So let's undo that. And actually, I see another problem. Let's just delete this whole group real quick. I want to go in and fix something first. Select the mask. If we zoom in really close, and I've got this pixel grid showing up, I'm going to go View, Show, Pixel Grid. I'm going to check it off. You can see we see a little tiny bit of this line at the very top and bottom of our button. So I'm going to select my mask. What I'm doing is I'm alt-clicking the mask. That'd be Option-click on the Mac. And you can see we've got gray up here instead of black. We want this gradation in the center, but this junk around the edges we absolutely don't want. I'm not going to take all the time to get rid of it all right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the pencil tool. I'm going to flip my foreground and background color by hitting the letter X. And I'm just going to paint black over about where my line is. Something like so. Alt-click my mask again, and look at that. We got rid of that, just that little bit of junk that's left. So now that we've done all of that, now we're ready to duplicate this button, and this part will take less than a minute. So I'm going to drag this group down to the new layers icon. There we go. We've got it. We're going to name it Twitter. Great. And before we do anything, let's go and link the line to the layer mask before we forget. Let's actually do that in the Facebook group too, just in case we move them around later or resize it or anything like that. So here we've got our Twitter button. We're going to drag this guy down. I'm holding the Shift key to constrain it in that straight line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text. I'm going to say, follow us on Twitter, exclamation point. Commit that change. Great. We're going to change the base color of the button by double-clicking the button fill layer, color icon there. And we're going to change it to a lighter blue, maybe something that's a little bit more vibrant. Boost the saturation just a little bit. We don't want to go too crazy with the Twitter button. You also don't want to get too dark. If you get too dark, it's going to start to look kind of bad. So we're going to go with a nice light blue like that. And all I need to do now, I'm going to leave, this is my Facebook icon right here. I'm going to leave that until I drag in the Twitter icon. So here we go. We've got the Twitter icon. I'm going to just, again, drag it, hold it over the tab, bring it in. We're going to size this guy way down. I'm going to hit Command or Control T to bring up free transform. Bring him way, way, way down. And then I'm going to zoom in using Control plus. Bring this guy right down. I actually need to make him a little tiny bit bigger. There we go, just like that. Commit the change. Now he's the light blue. We want to make him white, so we're going to double click the color thumbnail. Drag this down, drag this up. Go to the hue, select the hue, and then just drag it all the way to the top left corner. You'll have white. Go ahead and hit OK. And then all we need to do here, I'm going to drag out my layers panel so you can see what's happening. This color fill right here, this is our Facebook icon. All right, you can see him appearing and disappearing. This one on top is the Twitter icon. We want to duplicate this layer style. So I'm going to right click on this. Well, now I have to move off screen. So I'm going to go up here to layer, layer style. I'm just going to choose to copy the layer style and then select this layer and go layer, layer style, paste layer style. So we just have that same exact shadow. I'm going to select this layer, drag it down to the garbage can. Bam, got rid of that. Great. And now just zoom out. And you can see we've got ourselves a nice little Twitter button as well as a Facebook button. So very, very quickly you'll be able to create these buttons. And once you've done this, you can go ahead and create it for Google+, for Dribbble, for any kind of social media that you're using. You'll be able to quickly duplicate this, drop in a new icon, change the text, and change the color, and you'll have a brand new button that easily. So that's it for this one. I hope you learned a thing or two. Make sure you go check out the site. That's www.tutvid.com. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/tutvidfan. And follow me on Twitter @Tutvid. I'll catch you guys later.